Welcome back to Anything is Possible on News Talk 760 WJR. Now, here's your host, Jack Krasula.
Welcome back. We're with Caroline Ashleigh, who's become world-class in an extremely male-dominated profession. Caroline, how do you appraise a one-of-a-kind item?
There are few, truth be told, one-of-a-kind items. As they say, there's not much new under the sun. So when I work and have worked in this business for over 20 years, almost 25 now, I've seen many things that many people come to me and think are one-of-a-kind objects. But in fact, they are possibly very unique, but not necessarily one-of-a-kind. So the way I approach it, if it's so unique that there are very few comparables that exist in the world, let's say auction comparables, I look at things that are similar. Similar, let's say, in terms of the material that's used, similar in terms of age, condition, quality, etc. And I use those similarities to hone in on the value of things. So it's a little bit of an art and a little bit of science put together.
How do we learn more about Caroline Ashleigh Associates?
Well, you can go to the website, www.appraiseyourart.com, which is the website we use for people who are interested in appraising things, and www.auctionyourart.com is the site that is used for people who wish to sell things through my firm.
Caroline, why do people collect stuff?
That's a really good question. I think the question is not dissimilar to the question of why do people fall in love? The answers are sometimes irrational and always varied. But I think a common thread is that people who like to collect things do so out of passion. They like to collect out of curiosity. And then there's the emotional attachment they have to certain things. And then, of course, secondarily, some people collect out of an eye toward financial gain.
What advice would you give someone who wants to start collecting?
My advice is this, Jack. I think that people who should start collecting should narrow the field in terms of really thinking about the things that they're emotionally attracted to, the things that really speak to them. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But things that they're attracted to, I also think that if they've narrowed the field and they've decided they want to collect in a certain genre, then it's very important to collect the best of what you can afford and find things in the best condition that you can possibly find them, because those will be the best investments for the future.
Recently, you've appraised a celebrity's client collection that's worth over $50 million and an institutional client's collection worth over $900 million. The numbers are staggering. Do you ever mull in your head these numbers?
At the time I'm doing an appraisal, I don't. I really submerge myself in the act of looking at these things and appreciating these things. And then when I write the appraisal, when I have to come to a final value opinion, yes, sometimes it's totally staggering. Even for me, I'm just amazed at the total value of a collection. Let's say that a person has collected, let's say, the celebrity collection over $50 million worth. The time and the energy and the dedication that it took that individual to put together a collection of that magnitude, that's what's staggering to me.
Has there been one or two items in all these years, in these billions of dollars, that you've held and said, wow?
Well, one of the wow factors, two of the wow factors that come to mind were praising one of the pairs of ruby slippers that Judy Garland wore in The Wizard of Oz. And, of course, that was one of the films I loved as a child that so many people can relate to. And I actually got to hold a pair and eventually got to appraise a pair. One sold now actually it wasn't recently, I would say now it goes back about 7 years, sold for $66,000. That was an amazing find. But I think that the other thing that was amazing for me was to be able to appraise the dress that Marilyn Monroe wore in the 7-Year Itch, the subway dress that blew up. That was also a very interesting piece that ended up selling to an Asian collector in the millions of dollars.
Did you either try on those shoes or try on that dress, Caroline Ashleigh?
I was not allowed to try on either. And I misspoke. It's $660,000.
For the shoes?
Yes.
If PBS's Antiques Roadshow came to your house, what would we see? Or what do you collect?
A lot of people ask me that question. How did I get in the business and what do I collect? And I finally figured out that even though I've told people what I collect through the years and, I accession and deaccession things, the real thread that weaves it all together is the fact that I think I collect objects not from an object standpoint. They're not object-driven. They're actually subject-driven. And what I mean by that is I like to collect things that speak to me. I like to collect things that tell a story, that talk to me about their origin, who made them, who collected them. These are the things that fascinate me, and these are the things that I develop an emotional connection to and love to bring home and add to my collection. This is the reason that I collect, is to find out more about what these objects tell me. And in a moment, I'll tell you about one of those examples.
Please.
Well, I was up north, northern Michigan, and I had a client that bought an old train depot. And in the train depot, there were lots of objects, and much of this space was really untouched for many, many years. But I noticed in one dingy little corner there was a steamer trunk. And I knew that because of what it looked like, it was a Louis Vuitton trunk, and this trunk was from the latter half of the 1800s, 19th century, and that was in the age of, the golden age of travel, when people traveled a great deal by steamship and by rail. They'd put their belongings in these huge trunks, and they'd be, out at sea or on the rail for months at a time. And so these steamer trunks hold a lot of history. They have labels from places where they've been. And I knew just looking at the outside of it that it had to have been owned by a person that had some standing, because it was an expensive piece of luggage even then. So I opened the trunk to reveal all of these objects, mostly clothing, but one of the pieces of clothing, there were shoes, there were dresses, was a very special dress, and that dress happened to be a satin wedding gown. In not great condition, because of course, over time it had some condition issues, but I noticed that in the sleeve there was sewn something that was apparent was inside. I opened the seam to find this little handwritten note that was written from a mother to a bride on the eve of her wedding. And it said something to the effect that, may you go forward in life on a path strewn with thornless roses. Now for me, that kind of experience is what creates the mystery and the discovery of objects that keeps me in this business, that keeps me fascinated with what I do and makes it never, ever boring.
We're talking to Caroline Ashleigh, and I'm Jack Krasula, and this is Anything is Possible on News Talk 760 WJR.